Even though Elden Ring only released 5 months ago, it's nearly impossible to resist speculating about what could be next from the great Hidetaka Miyazaki and his team. From Software has spoiled its fans for over a decade now, and is as prolific as any other studio in the industry. Whereas it seemingly takes teams like Nintendo EAD, Rockstar Studios, Bethesda Game Studios, and CD Projekt Red, to name a few, forever, far too long to release new titles. We're talking 5, 6, or 7 or more years for a new Zelda title, a new GTA title, and so on. From Software never leaves its fans hanging for long. They clearly excel at project management, they know how to multitask, manage competing priorities, and continue making progress, continue moving forward, all while being incredibly creative and ambitious along the way. I still can't believe that between 2014 and 2017, FromSoft released Dark Souls 2, 3 DLC expansions, its all-inclusive remaster Scholar of the First Sin, Bloodborne, its Old Hunters DLC, Dark Souls 3, and its 2 DLC expansions. That's insane. And toward the end of this window, they were also deep in the development of Sekiro, Elden Ring, and potentially a few other projects. This is just one reason why FromSoft has been my favorite game developer for over a decade now. And as I'm gradually coming down from my Elden Ring high, taking a little breather from the game after hundreds of frenzied hours, I can't help but get excited about this quote from Miyazaki about thoughts of what's next. Now, he told 4Gamer the studio is going to continue to support Elden Ring with updates, and that could mean anything. It could simply mean more patches and more fine-tuning. But I think Elden Ring's map, its world, its combat systems and mechanics, it's also conducive to DLC, especially when you consider the game's insane success. Last I read, it's already sold over 13 million copies since February. I know Miyazaki likes to hit and run onto the next thing, but DLC feels inevitable. It feels like it just has to happen. And other than Demon's Souls and Sekiro, all of the mainline FromSoft titles during the Miyazaki era, dating back to 2009, have received DLC of some kind. I suppose even Sekiro did receive some post-launch content. But regardless of what happens with Elden Ring, what else is Miyazaki's team working on right now? What's next for them? Well, they could certainly be working on an all-new IP. I hope they are. And we can only imagine what that may be. Another high fantasy game? What about science fiction? What about a period-influence title like Bloodborne? Maybe they'd even stray away from their third-person action RPG comfort zone and release something totally different. Time will tell, but apart from those ideas, I thought it'd be fun to just go through the list to consider their existing IPs and discuss the likelihood they'd revisit them. Now, Miyazaki has commented on sequels numerous times, essentially suggesting he doesn't find them to be terribly inspiring and prefers to focus on new things, Dark Souls 3 being one exception to that rule. He's implied in the future he likely would not be interested in directing a sequel to an existing FromSoft IP, but that he may not have a problem with another director taking the reins, perhaps like his right-hand co-director Yui Tanimura did on Dark Souls 2. As a refresher, here's what Miyazaki told GameSpot in the summer of 2016. Quote, "The Dark Souls series is Bandai Namco Entertainment's IP, and Demon's Souls and Bloodborne are Sony Interactive Entertainment's IP. Hence, the decision to do a remake or remastering is under their jurisdiction. For me and for From Software, I don't think we'll be involved with their happening, but it could happen through another developer. This game, Dark Souls 3, marks a major turning point within the Dark Souls series. Just as it's been announced, we have 2 DLCs planned, but as it stands now, I'm not thinking about making any sequels or spin-offs. That applies to Bloodborne as well." End quote. And then, before we go through our list, here's an expansion of Miyazaki's recent comments to 4Gamer. I manually translated the interview through Google Translate, so take some of this language with a grain of salt, but I do sense Miyazaki's sentiments are still pretty intact despite that translation. So 4Gamer asks, quote, I think Elden Ring was a challenging title. If 2 comes out, it may be a hot seller, but From Software now doesn't do much like making a sequel by taking advantage of its name value. Dark Souls continued, but it was a break. Miyazaki then says, that point is case by case. There are merits in both taking over the numbering and creating a new work with a new title, so I would like to select as appropriate. 4Gamer. Therefore, I think it's really like From Software that it doesn't become a sequel in terms of sales. Miyazaki. I agree. The deciding factor for the choice I made earlier is, after all, whether we want to make it. Is that what we are? Speaking of which, I'm not very aware of it. 4Gamer. At the time of the interview with Sekiro in 2018, it was said that 3.5 lines were in operation in-house at that time, and 2 of them had not been announced. One of the published ones was Elden Ring, but is the other one still under development? Miyazaki. Yes, development is also in the final stages. 4Gamer. It's been a long time, so I would like to ask you again about the current development system of From Software. Miyazaki. As I answered in some interviews, I was able to create a title with a sense of Elden Ring because of the development of human resources in the company. But from now on, I will give them a project. I think that will be more likely to leave it to us. Actually, there are multiple titles directed by people other than me, and it is time to increase the number of developers. I think we can show you the direction of another color of From Software, so please look forward to it. End quote. Miyazaki goes on to state how he's trying to grow the company, make From Software a place where people can seriously focus on making interesting games, be compensated well, not have to worry about politics and bureaucracy, and a place where he can empower more creators, where he as president can continue to direct some projects himself, yes, but also leave other projects in capable hands. It's a great interview, even despite some possible translation inconsistencies, and I've posted the link in the description below if you'd like to translate it yourself or seek out someone else's translation. So let's start at the beginning, and no, I'm not referring to Demon Souls. The first FromSoft game Miyazaki was credited on is 2005's Armored Core Last Raven. It is actually the 11th game in the third-person shooter mecha franchise, which started way back in 1997. And then Miyazaki went on to direct Armored Core 4 and Armored Core 4 Answer in 2006 and 2008 respectively, before directing Demon Souls in 2009. And I'll be honest, I've never touched any of the Armored Core games. They never had a super strong presence in the West, but they certainly have a cult following to this day, and I think it makes sense if the team rebooted the franchise, especially because they know, given their enhanced credibility, that lots of new players would give Armored Core a shot. And I know I would too. Miyazaki and his team have my full trust at this point. I don't care what they do, what genres they dabble in the future. I'm eager to play anything they produce. But going back to Miyazaki's quotes, they lead me to believe he may not be in the driver's seat of an Armored Core reboot. Perhaps this is one of the titles another director is leading. There's certainly been lots of Armored Core rumors in recent years. There's been some curious language in some of FromSoft's public job postings too, and there's even this funny thing going on right now where if you Google their studio, their website comes up with the title Armored Core. Could this be a random mistake? Sure, but when you click into the site, you see the Armored Core franchise displayed proudly right next to Dark Souls, Elden Ring, Bloodborne, etc. I think it's happening. I think we're going to see a new Armored Core game in the coming years. Next up would be Demon Souls, and no, I don't believe we'll ever see a sequel to Demon Souls. I suppose if Sony wanted it, they could make it happen with or without FromSoft's involvement, but I don't know, we just got the Blue Point remake a year and a half ago, and even though it'd be interesting to see more of Boletaria or its surrounding lands to learn more about that world, I just can't ever see it happening, and frankly, I'd prefer if it didn't. Demon Souls is an incredible standalone experience. Next up, the Dark Souls trilogy. Miyazaki has been careful to never say, yes, it's definitely over, there will never be another Dark Souls game. However, he said everything but that. Dark Souls 3, in my mind, is the clear conclusion of that story, of that world. It's my favorite trilogy in all of gaming, but I'm doubtful Dark Souls 4 will ever happen, and if it does, it'll be many years from now. I do feel Elden Ring is a clear spiritual successor to Dark Souls, and is likely the closest thing we'll ever get to DS4. Next, Bloodborne. Now, as you know, I love to poke fun at all of the baseless Bloodborne rumors that have been flying around for years now, all of the YouTube channels that are devoted to pumping out empty clickbait over and over year after year. But there's no doubt that today interest in Bloodborne remains very real, and Miyazaki has a special place in his heart for this game. He said so himself, and when Bloodborne came out after Demon's Souls, after Dark Souls, it really cemented FromSoft as a special studio. It was the moment I think a lot of people realized, oh, nobody else is making games like this. But personally, I don't want a sequel to Bloodborne. Like Demon's Souls, maybe even more so, I think it's a beautifully self-contained experience. Between the base game and the DLC, every question I had as a player was sufficiently answered. And lingering questions that remain unanswered, well, I saw and heard and experienced enough of Yharnam and of the Hunter's Nightmare to draw my own conclusions, which is often, in my opinion, much more satisfying than having things explicitly spelled out. What I'd most like to see in a future game is Bloodborne's transforming weapons. They're one of FromSoft's greatest contributions to gaming, in my opinion, and they're the main reason why Bloodborne's combat has so much depth. I don't want Bloodborne 2 personally, but I do want a new game, a new IP, that iterates on the transforming weapons concept. That'd be awesome, but I wouldn't be shocked if Blue Point or another group remade Bloodborne if it received some kind of re-release in the coming years. I think the odds of a sequel are slim, but if it were to happen, I think Miyazaki's quotes are quite clear, and it would likely be led by another director, which isn't necessarily a bad thing at all, even though I'll admit I'm most interested in playing his games, to be fair, not just the games he supervises. Sekiro. This is a tough one. Like Demon's Souls and Bloodborne, Sekiro feels just right to me. I don't need any more or any less. It's nearly perfect as is. But it was a successful game by many measures and features, in my opinion, probably the greatest combat system in any video game ever. Like Bloodborne's transforming weapons, it'd be a shame to never see that rhythmic sword combat return. So that'd be my hope. I don't personally want Sekiro 2, but I'd love to see a spiritual successor, which, dovetailing into Elden Ring, could be set in the Land of Reeds, within the same universe as Elden Ring, but with the grappling and sprinting and swordplay. Oh yeah, that's what I'm interested in. Even more than Elden Ring 2, I'd love to see a Sekiro-inspired Elden Ring spinoff, but that's probably a pipe dream. What I suspect is more likely is a proper sequel, Elden Ring 2, possibly directed by Tanimura. Just like the DLC feels inevitable, I think a sequel does too. But FromSoft is gonna FromSoft. If they don't want to do it, and if publisher Bandai Namco doesn't force it, then it won't happen. But I'd bet we see it in the next 3 to 5 years. Now, even older FromSoft IPs like Kingsfield, Shadow Tower still have their fans, but I can't see it happening. Reboots, remakes, I don't know. In my mind, those are retro games. They're an important part of the studio's history, but I can't imagine the current team going that far back into the catalog. I just can't envision it. So to recap, what would I most like to see? I'd like to see spiritual successors to Bloodborne and Sekiro, not direct sequels, but all new IPs that further iterate on those games' mechanics, much like they themselves did with Dark Souls and Demon's Souls. That's my wish, and as much as I prefer new IPs to sequels, I wouldn't complain one bit about Elden Ring 2, I have to admit, because I believe FromSoft left room to top themselves. They could further fine-tune the world, the systems, cut down on the number of boss reskins, things like that. But I'm most curious about what you think. What game or games do you want to see next? from Miyazaki and his team? Do you want sequels, remakes, or reboots? Or would you prefer new IPs like me? Post your thoughts down in the comments, and remember that you're also welcome to hang out anytime over in my Discord server, Terapop's Treehouse, and you can also further support what I do and unlock additional content from me over at patreon.com/Terapop. All those links are down in the description. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.